Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody on Facebook out there. Today, we have a special screen-to-screen episode, Why You Should Be Hiring Veterans. My name is Kristen Wishon, and I'm the moderator of today's event. I'm also the Public Service Chair for PRSA Pittsburgh. Joining me today, I have Pittsburgh Hires Veterans, which is an area nonprofit dedicated to helping vets, and one of our chapter's public service partners that I have had the pleasure of working with this fall. So today we are talking about hiring veterans, and this event was also presented by our chapter's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And so what better time to talk about this topic than the day before Veterans Day, right? So glad to have you guys here. It's a very important topic. And we also have Pittsburgh Hires Veterans' very first fundraiser happening tomorrow. So at 9 a.m., they're having a bike tour. So we will pop a link in the chat if you're interested in learning more about that and talk a little bit about that later. But without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful guests. So first we have Dayna Brown. She is Pittsburgh Hires Veterans Executive Director. Hi, Dayna. How are you? And she has more of a decade of experience in mid-level executive leadership for nationwide specialty retailers. She's also a board member of Friends of Pittsburgh Fisher House and secretary for the auxiliary VFW Post 6664. So thank you, Dayna, for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Love to be here.
We also have Brian Harkins. He is a U.S. Marine Corps vet and a retired Pittsburgh firefighter. So thank you so much, Brian. And he worked at the Joint Public Affairs Office in the Marines and was deployed to Central and South America after earning his degree in journalism. So he is actually the employment specialist for Pittsburgh Hires Veterans and is basically a recruiter for various organizations. So thank you so much for being here, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, last but not least, we have George Scott, also an amazing Marine Corps vet. He had one tour in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And he has a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in mental health counseling from the University of St. Francis in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So George comes to us as a licensed mental health counselor, and he does work with trauma-informed community reintegration for vets, which is amazing and will be a great perspective to hear from you on that too. He's also an adjunct professor at Point Park. And so thank you so much, George, for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So thank you everyone on Facebook right now that's tuning in, and hopefully today's conversation will be useful and enlightening. You'll learn something. I'll probably learn something about the issues that vets face whenever they do come back to civilian life and try to rejoin the workforce, and what we as employers, hiring managers, people in business spaces can do better to make that easier for vets. And so as we get started with this conversation, you know, for many civilians, it might be difficult to understand, especially if you don't know a vet or, you know, have any experience with that, to understand what the transferable skills are that vets often come back to the US with after serving. So can you guys tell us a little bit about your perspective on that, and what are the most common skills that vets can bring to the workforce?
Go ahead, Brian and George.
I'll start. I'll just be brief, and I'm sure you guys can add to it. When I was in the Marine Corps, we always said that the Marine Corps teaches you things that you can use in everyday society, and I have to agree. I mean, it instills in you the discipline, the integrity, the ability to work unsupervised and to hold yourself accountable. And I got to say about today's military, I mean, when I was in, it was the early 80s. Today's military, it is high tech, and all the neat little toys that come out is starting the military first. And the people that come out of the military today are highly trained and highly skilled, and they need good paying jobs. And I'll pass it on to George.
Thank you, Brian. I'd like to echo what Brian said about the technology. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was in from 89 to 95, and we used the modern day GPS system. So when you can't figure out your way to get to the other side of Pittsburgh, we were the first ones to use that in Desert Storm. It was called Global Positioning System, Florida's Global Position. So I think that veterans have a unique skill set, from time management to critical thinking skills. The thing about the critical thinking skills that most veterans have is they've used those skills under immense pressure and duress in combat. Looking at post 9/11 now, we were at war for 18, almost 19 years. So the critical thinking skills that veterans have now, when most have been to combat, are crucial and key and very important to today's workforce. And like Brian said, it's key that they have that technological component.
So I'm not a Marine Corps veteran. I am a Marine Corps veteran spouse. That's why we're all wearing red today. There's a common theme here. We tend to like Marines around here. My husband served in Desert Storm. He is a combat veteran, a machine gunner, and worked in Marine security forces. So based on what I have seen from being a former hiring manager and also having the privilege to spend a lot of time around a lot of different veterans with an amazing diversity of skill sets, I think there are some common traits that veterans bring to the workforce that would benefit any company. And some of these are leadership, commitment, a results orientation. In the military, it would be called mission oriented, but in the civilian sector, we call it results oriented. People that have served their country are accustomed to being very flexible and very resilient, resourceful. These are things that are taught right from whenever you get off the bus and emerge in your wonderful world of first day of boot camp. Someone who has fulfilled their 4 years of service would have led small teams, 2 to 3 people. And when we say led, and when we talk about commitment, these individuals are responsible for not just making sure that a mission is completed, but they are also responsible for the general welfare and well-being of the people that they're leading. And so what that means is they're responsible for things that could affect their ability to perform well on their job, that affect them outside of work. So this could be finances, marital problems, mental health problems. And if you're leading that team, you're expected to know the people that you're working with and help them through these obstacles. I don't know of too many employers that place that level of trust and expectation in their leaders at such a very quick time in service. So these are just some of the soft skills that veterans bring to the table that I think could impact a company very quickly.
Thank you. And, to that point, veterans actually face higher unemployment on average than civilians, especially in Pennsylvania. And I learned that through you, Dayna, and working with Pittsburgh Hires Veterans. So, despite all of these really great soft skills that you guys all just mentioned, veterans commonly coming back to civilian life with, why do you think there's such a divide in hiring vets today, and especially in our state?
I'll start and then I'll pass it. So less than 0.5% of the nation's population is currently serving. That's a very small percentage. Less than 8% of the nation's population has served or is serving. So that's very small. So when you think about 92% of the population has never served, there can be a significant divide and misalignment of understanding between what it takes to serve, and also from veterans coming back, just reacclimation into a civilian lifestyle. So I would say that that's probably one of the biggest hurdles and challenges. Is such a small population, but a very important population, is really struggles to be understood by the majority of the population. Brian?
I'll just enhance on that a little bit. I mean, there's just a tremendous disconnect today between the civilian population and the military population. And I think it's all ingrained from when I noticed when I was a kid. There was a lot of military bashing going on in the 70s when I was growing up. It continued into the 80s when I was in college. A lot of people just, they have the wrong idea about the type of person that's in the military and what we actually do. What I noticed, there's a lot of lineage in the military. Chances are, if your dad was in the military, you're going to be as well. If your dad wasn't in the military, you're not going to join either. It's just basically what I've seen. And I think that that's just what leads to the disconnect. And there's just a lot of people just basically don't understand us, and they don't understand why people would want to do what we've done.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Historically, the military, and I can only speak for the Marine Corps, you'll very rarely hear me speak down on the Marine Corps, but historically, the military has done a poor job at transitioning people from the military into the civilian, back into the civilian workforce or back into the civilian lifestyle. And so there needs to be a connection. There needs to be some type of conversation had between the local area and the very top level of the military, with organizations such as Pittsburgh Hires Veterans and other veterans that help veterans find jobs, because it's the military's job to win battles, protect the United States. They never said, "Oh, we'll help you get a job when you get out." They should do that. If you look at Homer's Odyssey, if you've ever read that back in school, back in college, you'll look at the main character's journey back to the civilian life after the war. And so he had to have civilians, his family members, his friends, or civilians in towns help him through his journey or his odyssey back to where he was going. It took over 10 years. And so civilians are a very important part of our transition back into society. But there is, as Brian put it, a disconnect. There's a communication barrier between what veterans know and what civilians know, and where we need to get together to marry up together to help veterans move back into society, the mainstream society. So if there were more, or if there were town hall meetings, if there were Zoom meetings, and this would be a perfect opportunity with the pandemic going on, to connect veteran service organizations such as Pittsburgh Hires Veterans with the VA, the government, and things of that nature, to say, okay, how can we better transition veterans from all services to help them be able to connect immediately, form a pipeline, connect immediately with people to help them find employment. Because the thing is, when people go into the military at 18, 17, 18, like I did, we might stay for 6, 10, 20, 30 years. We might stay for 38 years, but we're coming back to, if not our community, a community. And would you want us to come back unemployed,
Sure,
without skills, or would you want us to come back with the skill sets to easily transition into the workforce?
Yeah. Yeah, those are great points. And so what is happening now for vets once they are transitioning to citizen life and the workforce? Is there anything that's already in place that agencies are doing to help with that?
I think Brian alluded to it in his earlier remarks about the transition assistance, or maybe it was George. Upon exiting, or prior to exiting the military, a service member will receive approximately 5 days worth of transition assistance. And this is intended to help a veteran acclimate into civilian life as it relates to housing and employment and finance. And so it's a pretty, I would say, comprehensive program. Unfortunately, it's just 5 days. I mean, there's employment you could talk about for 5 days to help someone get ready. So the military definitely gets the ball rolling there, and it is definitely up to the transitioning service member to pick up the pieces where they don't understand. Many
Mhm.
times as a service member too, when they're transitioning out, they're excited, they're moving on to a new chapter of life. So it's just like anything else that we embark on when we're excited, we kind of listen in and out. So some of what is covered sometimes doesn't necessarily stick the first time
Yeah.
around. So my recommendation for anyone that is transitioning out of the military would be to start early. When I say start early, 6 months to a year in advance, I really think about where you want to be living and connect with local resources in that community that can help you prepare. So you'll still go through the military's program, but you absolutely need to have a civilian agency advocating for you, especially in this tough work environment right now. George or
Anybody
Brian?
else? Yeah. No pressure.
Well, I think there's an organization north of here called Simplify Odyssey, and there's a gentleman who goes around to different vet centers and things of that nature. I think that we could use the vet centers here in Pennsylvania as a tool in one of our toolkits to help transition veterans, because if you think about it, if you don't know, unemployment is a major factor in suicide in veterans. So the vet center is there to help transition veterans in a mental health piece. So if there was a piece there in the vet centers that could connect them, the veterans, with veteran service organizations such as Pittsburgh Hires Veterans, then that would ease the stress and trauma of unemployment, uncertainty, because you've been doing something since 18, your very first period of adulthood, until you're 25 or 35 or 45. You don't know anything else.
Yeah.
And so there's that period of uncertainty, there's that period of fear, what next, the unknown. And so if you have that sort of someone to come alongside the veteran and guide them, much like a drill instructor boot camp, they are there to guide, and they do it quite well. So, it would make the transition into community life so much easier and so much more fulfilling.
For businesses then, and organizations and companies looking to hire veterans, what policies or partnerships have you guys identified as valid avenues that are helping veterans gain long-term careers, especially at like the administrative level? We're talking about what the government is doing to help transition, but are there things that are happening now in businesses and companies that are facilitating that?
And what I've noticed with businesses in the Pittsburgh area is there are a lot more. I mean, in my opinion, I think there are a lot more that are reaching out to us to hire veterans right now. They are aware that there are a lot of highly trained veterans in the area. And we do get phone calls here every week from companies that want to hire veterans. But again, I think X amount of those companies don't understand what type of person they're going to be getting. They have it in their head that what a veteran is and what actually a veteran is two different things. But I mean, I have to say that when I was discharged, when I came back to Pittsburgh, we didn't have any of this in place. I see a lot of veteran groups helping veterans, such as Onward Opportunity, PA Serves, the Wounded Warrior Project, Veteran Leadership, Veterans Helping Veterans. This is all great for veterans now. That actually gets them prepared to meet the hiring authorities and to get their resume and to work on their interviewing skills and basically to teach them how to market their backgrounds to the companies that they're applying for.
Right.
But I mean, I have to think it's on the upswing, and actually I'm encouraged by the amount of employers who are reaching out to us. But I mean, we still have a long way to go, but that tells me that everybody's willing to work together. And as long as we get a better understanding of each other, it's just going to get even better.
Kristen, if I could jump in here real quick too, there are a couple other partner agencies that do great work. We have a great relationship with Veterans Place and Vet Jobs, which is part of a national veteran hiring organization. And also in Pittsburgh specifically, there is the Pittsburgh Veterans Employer Coalition, which is comprised of business owners and large and small companies, variety veteran service organizations, educational institutions, and also some of the commanders from the local reserve and guard. And this organization specifically exists to help improve veteran hiring outcomes in the region. So if you're an employer out there that would like to connect with a coalition, a group of people that feel like you do, that want to see the value of hiring veterans and want to get connected to more of them or understand best practices in hiring, attracting, hiring, and retaining veterans, I would definitely recommend getting connected to them.
Also, Pennsylvania, I discharged back to Chicago back in '95. And as Brian said, there was nothing like this at all. You get out, you go find a job.
You're on your own.
You're on your own. And so here in Pennsylvania is the fourth largest footprint for veteran presence behind California, Texas, Florida. And so there is a big push now here, especially within the last 3 years since I've been here, to hire veterans. And companies are and organizations are doing a good job in trying to reach out. Organizations are literally saying, we want to hire veterans. But you also have the veteran spouse. You also have the female veteran. There shouldn't be a difference between a veteran and female veteran, but there is. Female veterans have a different need, so to speak, when it comes to employment. If you just think about it, you have a lot of mothers who are single mothers that are veterans. They have a need. You need healthcare, you need childcare and things of that nature. So there are places here like Google that provides things like that are thinking innovatively to hire female veterans. And you also have the veteran spouse, because when a veteran deploys or a service member deploys, well, guess what? The spouse does too. And she's there taking care of things. And so you don't make a lot of money in the military. And so it would help the household to hire a veteran spouse, And as Dayna says, when you help a veteran or veteran spouse, you don't just help one person, you may end up helping 9 people in a family.
Yeah. And so as we are all working within the boundaries of this lovely pandemic, lots of things are being affected by that all over the place, including people's jobs, of course. And so as we have tried to cobble together ways of helping each other and new policies are being established, is there anything that's happening now or that has been established to ensure veterans are not overlooked or adversely impacted as many companies and organizations continue to work from home, furlough people, lay people off, all the things that are happening right now?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that we have uncovered during this pandemic is the lack of access to technology and internet. And this doesn't affect a veteran. This affects anyone who's job seeking, but specifically, this is a high priority population. So at Pittsburgh Hires Veterans, we are accepting in-person appointments. You can come here, use our computers, use our technology. We can help you in person. It's been heartbreaking, actually, to know that some of the places that could have helped very quickly initially were also affected by the shutdown. And these would be places like PA CareerLink and the Carnegie Library System. People could just normally go there. And now with everyone competing for technology in the household, you have families, juggling jobs and homeschooling. So it's not just as simple as, let me just fill out this application real quick. You have to be really strategic now. So we are hopeful that things, get a little bit better, but this has been a big challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge until I think, more places are able to work at more full capacity. But anyone can come to our offices. If we need to meet you somewhere to help you, we have arrangements all throughout the city. We can do that too. But I'll turn it to Brian and George.
Yeah, I'll just expand on what Dayna mentioned a little bit, because it was really bad during COVID, especially initially when And like Dayna said, it was everybody, not just veterans. We didn't have access to electronics. Libraries weren't open. Career Links was closed down, and it's just people in general couldn't send resumes to hiring authorities because they just did. Some of them just don't have that access. They're not caught up electronically, and they don't have those capabilities in their home. And as we slowly begin to open back up and people are using those facilities, I mean, it's helping, but I mean, I think it affected everybody, not just veterans.
Yeah.
But in this electronic world, for the people who didn't have those capabilities at home, they were left behind. They were truly left behind.
I think that employers now during the pandemic, from what I've seen, are doing a good job in being flexible with veterans and everyone. And so I've been hired. I was hired recently at Red Cross. I left here September 11, and I started September 14 at Red Cross. But the process, the interviews, sometimes the Zoom interviews didn't work, so we just did it on the phone. They were being flexible. I helped a gentleman get a job. He moved here from New York during the pandemic, and he actually had an in-person interview at the organization he works at. He had a Zoom interview, he had a phone interview, he had a Skype interview. They actually texted back and forth for part of the interview. And so employers are being flexible, they're being innovative and things of that nature, because it literally is affecting everyone. And it looks like we're going to be here a bit longer. There's some things saying that, okay, we may have or may not have a vaccination, but we can't count on that. We have to continue to be flexible and innovative in hiring practices.
So this isn't a question I had written down for you guys, but is there any advice that you would give to people that are hiring right now, whether it's veterans or not, to that point, George, of flexibility and kind of being a little bit more aware of other people's varying situations right now?
I would say to employers who are looking to hire during the pandemic, be flexible, one. Two, understand that you have a need, the veteran or the civilian, whoever you're hiring has a need. Seek to understand rather than be understood, and try to meet in the middle for the good of both parties, because we all have to work together now to stay together, to be stronger together. So just work together.
I would also say that thankfully this has happened, because I think some of the very rigid and strict employers are now really realizing that, oh my gosh, people have gaps on their and on their resume, and there really are legitimate, real reasons why these gaps exist. So that's kind of exciting, but not really whenever someone's lost their job. But I do think that people, hiring authorities are being just more aware of some of the challenges, and I think they are being more flexible. I do think that there are opportunities for them to continue to be understanding in the length of time it could take for someone to complete all steps of the process. Just to share a real quick story, we had someone that applied, and they knew they had to do an assessment. They could apply using their smartphone, but they needed an actual laptop to do the assessment. They were going to use their neighbors, but they couldn't make arrangements to do that for a couple days. I mean, this is crazy. Just come in and, we'll help you with that. But that's just kind of little things that are just should be very easy are not very easy anymore.
Yeah. So this question probably will be, not to assume, but a good one for George to answer. So research shows that high quality mental health care, as you know, is a good solution for the mental and physical health of vets during their transition, whether that's into the workplace or just back home, right? So are these services commonly integrated into healthcare plans of organizations and businesses that you guys are working with, or just generally? And if not, how can business leaders ensure these services that are helpful to vets and civilians, honestly, too, are guaranteed?
That is a good question. Understand, and it's good for employees to understand that mental health and physical health washes each other's hands. You can't have one without the other. And so from what I've seen, it depends on the size of the employer. You have your small employers, I believe it's 500 and under, but what about your itty bitty employers that have 10 people or 7 people? So these don't even have healthcare. At your larger employers, they'll have the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, where a veteran or anyone can go and get 6 sessions of free counseling. But what happens when you need more than 6 sessions? You cannot forego hiring someone because they have a disorder or mental illness. It would even be against the law to ask them if they do have that. And, now we're dealing with the pre-existing conditions with our healthcare now. And that is a whole nother class. But you have to be able to provide quality healthcare for your employees because you hired them for a reason. Again, you have a need and they have a need. And so when you have a happy and healthy employee, you have good production and good outcomes because again, it is about mission orientation. You have to come to an outcome. You have to be able to provide quality health care and quality mental health care for your workers. It's just, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Any other thoughts? Brian or
Brian, I
Dayna?
know you had some thoughts on this.
I think it's, well, I thought it would pertain to the next question, but since I'll address it with regards to mental health in the military and comparing it to the civilian sector. The National Institute of Mental Health says that 1 in 5 adults have mental illness. That's in the United States. It's 20% of the civilian populace. However, the DoD rate of mental illness in the military is 8.3%. That's significantly lower, less than half as much. But yet the perception is that it's a lot higher in the military.
Yeah.
We can talk to that all day long as to why that exists. But I mean, it's actually lower in the military. And it just amazes me that people don't realize that it's not reported on like that as well. As bad, all the Georgia.
That's a great
Dayna.
point to bring
Yeah,
up.
it is. I mean, it's the truth. It's higher in the civilian sector, but yet it's military personnel that have that hanging over their heads.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a really great thing for hiring managers and businesses to understand. So thank you for bringing that up. I didn't know that.
And I've noticed on job interviews that I've been on since I retired from the Pittsburgh Fire Bureau, I could tell during interviews that person sitting across the desk from me was really thinking, how damaged is this guy? What's it going to take for him to snap? Instead of listening to me respond as to how I can better help his company.
Right.
And I got that clearly on several interviews. I truly did.
Yeah.
Well, it's a stigma. It's a stigma when you have people in the military, when we get out, when you look back to World War I, World War II, the shell shock, the Korea, Vietnam, the shell shock, and the way that they were treated, the veterans were treated when they came back. So you go to another country and fight, and if you go out into the town in that country, you're literally treated better than you're treated in your own home country. And so that, coupled with the uncertainty of what's going to happen next, people respond in different ways. I don't want to say snap, but they respond in different ways. And so until we are able to educate ourselves about mental illness and move past that stigma of, everyone in the military has PTSD, or everyone in the military, no, not everyone in the military has PTSD or whatever. There's a good, I don't want to say a larger, but there is a significant amount who have been to combat and who have been exposed to atrocities. Yes, they may or may not end up with PTSD, but not everybody in the military goes to combat. Okay. There are grunts in the military, infantrymen who have never been in combat. There are journalists in the Marine Corps who have been in combat. And so you just never know, but you have to treat each veteran just as the individual veteran. and be able to educate yourselves, seek to understand rather than be understood. And then again, come together and come alongside that veteran, because it will, when you hire a veteran and they smoothly transition back into the community will be better.
I would say there's a couple resources that I would like to highlight that specifically relate to health and mental health. So the VA provides counseling, and people that are eligible for VA services definitely can take advantage of that. I would strongly encourage people to take advantage of the vet centers that are here in Pittsburgh. The people that work there are amazing, and they can refer you to resources. And then also locally, there is PA Serves, which acts as like a safety net to an employer's EAP system, where if an employer has knowledge that maybe a veteran that they have employed is struggling in some area outside of work, they can make the referral, or they can encourage the veteran to reach out to PA Serves, and PA Serves can connect that individual with the appropriate resources that can help them overcome their challenges. There are some other more national things. There's the Mission Act that was passed in 2018 that is intended on helping the whole veteran. So a lot of times when people go to the VA for care, it is more medicinally based, so medicine, whereas the Mission Act incorporates a variety of holistic therapeutic practices that can also be very beneficial in addressing people's mental health. Things like Tai Chi, acupuncture, therapeutic massage. I mean, there's a range of other types of treatments that could be very, very beneficial. Also on a national level is Psych Armor Institute, which I have to read what they do. But we promote them as a really great resource. They provide free education and support to how to work with, live with, or care for military veterans. So, and you can access their site, and you can just Google it, Psych Armor. And they're a really fantastic resource for mental health. And we can all use a little bit of those, regardless of if you're a veteran or not. Everyone's mental health is being seriously challenged these days.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say, Dayna.
Yeah.
We all have our traumas, regardless of if we're a vet or not. And I think hiring managers, and just people in businesses in general, should recognize that. And that's why this conversation is so important as part of our diversity and inclusion committee here at PRSA Pittsburgh, because, we talk about microaggressions, we talk about stigmas, we talk about all of those things that are happening across the board in a lot of different ways, but veterans are part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important for us to kind of discuss that and, really talk about those issues. So, if I'm hiring a vet in my company, what can I do to ensure that I'm creating a supportive environment that's going to foster success for that new employee?
I'll jump right in. Just treat him like everybody else. He's an employee. Give him a chance, hear him out just like you would anybody else. And I'm always going to say, I think you're going to get a better employee if you hire a vet. I always do. Just give him a chance.
I think it would be incumbent upon any organization to reach out and hire a veteran, because he or she has done, as we spoke, what 92, 93% the rest of the population could not or would not do for whatever reason. If you hire a veteran, you'll get that unique life experiences. You'll get the unique skill sets. You'll get a person who is willing to get up early and stay up late. You'll get a person who is willing to be held accountable and hold others accountable. You'll have someone there who is able to think critically, think on their feet. Someone who is able to say, no, that's not right. And that is very, very uncommon in today's society. Someone once said, I believe it was Admiral Chester Nimitz, who said, uncommon valor is a common virtue. Common valor is an uncommon virtue. I'm lost here, I'm sorry. But it's good to hire veterans, female and male veterans. And so you should educate yourself as an organization and an employer on what a veteran is, what a veteran looks like, what a veteran is looking for, what a veteran can bring to the table. And so Dayna and I, we had the opportunity to take a free certification through SHRM, Society of Human Resources Management, called Veterans at Work. And I would recommend that certification for everybody who has an organization that is looking to hire veterans. Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure we put that in the chat.
Yeah, I think I just did.
Yeah, you're in.
So from spending a lot of time with veterans and really listening to, what is meaningful to them in the employment search, it is the recreation of some of the aspects that they love about the military that might be missing in their transition into the civilian life. So if you are a veteran, part of what you may have really enjoyed in the military is working with people and in a place where you belong. Like what you do really matters. Every component of every person and component of the mission was critically important to achieve maximum success. And so if you leave that type of environment and you don't feel as connected to an organization or the work that you're doing, then that's like a wah-wah, not as, it's definitely not as much fun or purposeful for you. So it would be very important for, if you are considering hiring a veteran, to find out, what are their long-term aspirations. Career progression is very important. When you're in the military, again, if you've been in the military for years, you have progressed. So that could be something that you really expect out of your employer. Like you need to give me feedback a lot, all the time. I need to know how I'm doing, where I stand, how do I get to the next level? And when I do those things, I should expect that should happen to me. I think involving someone in the hiring process, whether that's having another veteran look at veteran resumes, also in the interview process, if you can have another veteran sit in and kind of translate some of the things or verbiage that might be used to help the employer better appreciate the experience. Someone who has successfully transitioned. And then once you've hired someone, so, congratulations, we made a great hire, but you definitely want that hire to stick. So, assigning a mentor to help transition that person into the job, into the culture of your company, into the civilian, navigating the civilian politics, for lack of a better word. In the military, it's all about team. In the civilian world, it's less about that and more about me. So a veteran may not strongly advocate for themselves or ask they will ask questions, but in terms of seeking to understand the process and how things go to promotion, that could be something, a hiring manager or someone who's in charge of veterans really needs to be aware.
Those are really good tips. Anybody else? We're good? Okay. So this is, I think, the most exciting part and why everybody's wearing red right now. So today, which I didn't know this, but maybe some of our viewers know this already, is their Marine Corps birthday. So happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys look great for your age. No.
245 years.
There you go. So just quickly, we don't have to get too in depth with this, but tell me a little bit why this is important and if there's any events happening locally that people might want to know about.
Well, I would say Marine Corps birthday is very important to Marines because tradition and history is important to Marines. If you don't know the history of the Marine Corps was born 10 November 1775 in Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The first two Marines were Robert Mullen and Samuel Nicholas. And we were created by an act of Continental Congress to be a force in readiness to deploy forward and to win this nation's battles swiftly and aggressively in times of crisis, to fight in air, land, and sea, and to provide protection for naval forces and ground forces, naval vessels and ground forces. So that's a lot. What that means is we're able to do everything that every other branch can do, but we are a force of readiness. We're the smallest branch. And so I'm not putting any other branch down. If you ask most people in the Army when their birthday is, they're like, I don't know. If you ask Air Force, I don't know. If you ask Navy, or even now, Space Force, I don't know. Ask a Marine. You ask a Marine private, Marine Staff Sergeant, Marine General, and they'll say 10 November 1775. If you say, hey, soldier, to someone in the Army, the private will turn around and answer. The general may not. If you say, hey, airman, to someone who's in the Air Force, the airman might turn around and answer, but the chief or the general may not. So on and so forth. But if you walk in a parking lot, if there's a Marine Corps private, if there's a staff sergeant, if there's a gunnery sergeant, if there's a lieutenant, if there's the commandant, you say, hey, Marine, we'll all turn around. Tradition is very important to us. And it's not about us, it's not about the Marine Corps, but it's about the person that's next to us serving. It's about this country, God Country Corps. So we stick to our core values, honor, courage, and commitment. And that is the hallmark of a Marine. And so one that I know of is Pittsburgh Hires Veterans. They're having a bike ride, which I can't go because I'm on call at the Red Cross. And that is very important for Veterans Day, the Marine Corps birthday. There was a Marine Corps ball that I attended a couple nights ago in a social club in Bethel Park. It's very important to celebrate each and every branch, not only the Marine Corps, but each and every branch, because these branches, they're here to protect and serve the United States of America and to help those who are too, I don't want to say weak, but are not able to help themselves, whether they be here or it's abroad. And it's a special type of person that comes from each corner of this country that answers the call. When someone says, who's going to go for us? They'll say, I'll go. And so it's important to celebrate those people. It's important to celebrate those birthdays. Yeah. Hoorah.
Happy birthday. Well, I would like to wrap up this wonderful conversation to really connect anybody interested in learning more about hiring veterans, how they can do better, any of that stuff with Pittsburgh Hires Veterans. So what is your recommendations on anybody listening in today on what they can and should do?
So connect with us. Go ahead, Brian.
I'd like to start out with that because about 2.5 years ago, I was in that boat again, transitioning back into the civilian populace. And I knew enough to put a resume together, but I mean, I'm a journalism major. I know to do that stuff and I'm capable of doing it. I went to my first Veteran Fest at the convention center in town, and I stopped at the VA booth to voice my displeasure, like a lot of us do. And that's where I met Jack Wagner, our chairman. And that's where it all took off for me. He handed me his business card. He said, Brian, I can help you with your transition. I made the appointment with George Scott. He came in, did the intake with me. And then I met with Dayna Brown. She helped me up with my resume, my interviewing skills, and how to go and look for work. And then she gave me a date there was a Veteran Job Fest at the Washington Wild Things. And it must have been the hottest day of the summer. I've said it before, and I'm one of the few guys that showed up in a suit and tie.
We did.
And when I walked out of there, and they were there, they saw me. I sweat clean through it. But I'm telling you, it was worth it, because when I walked out of there with 2 jobs, not interviews. I walked out with jobs, and it just naturally worked around it. When George left here, I just transitioned right in. But if you're a veteran and if you're a veteran and you need to transition, you got to look for the resources that are out there and use them. Make the connection, because everybody there, they're going to do everything they can to help you. And that's the one thing Pittsburgh Hires Veterans has done for me. They've done nothing but help me from day one. From day one, they've helped me. And here I was in my 50s. I mean, I had my education and my work experience, but still, I'm in my 50s. I'm an older worker. I didn't know how I was going to make it back into the civilian scene, but they helped. They were there, and I wouldn't have made it without Pittsburgh Hires Veterans, and I wouldn't have made it without the big safety net that we have here in Pittsburgh for veterans. I would have never made it. And so I just encourage, if there's a veteran watching here, if you're looking for work or maybe you want a better opportunity, reach out to all your veteran resources out there, because they will help you. It's a tremendous resources, and take advantage of them because it works. It works.
I'd like to add to that before Dayna finishes up. So I moved here to Pittsburgh, and I have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in mental health counseling. I also have a background. I wasn't always the professor or the person with the education. So I dealt with a lot of addictions, a lot of anger. Actually ended up in prison for 8.5 years. So I moved here to Pittsburgh, and I couldn't find employment. And I couldn't find employment. I was like, yeah, this is not going to happen. So I can't remember. I met with Dr. Accomando. He's on the board, and he's at Duquesne University. He's in charge of the Veterans Office. So he said, go down to Pittsburgh Hires Veterans. And I was like, yeah, another organization that's not going to do anything. So I said, okay, I'll go. And the day I got here, I was up on the hill behind the office. I swear it was probably 300 yards from the office, but it's up on the hill. And I called Dayna. I said, Dayna, I don't know where I am. She said, you're right behind us. I said, yeah, but I can't get there. It's raining. People are driving like, I don't know. And I was like, you would think if you were born here, it rains every year. Come on. But people were, and I was frustrated. And I got here and I sat down in front of Dayna's chair, and I just looked at her. She said, here, do this, do this, do this. I started filling out the paper. And they said, well, why don't we just hire you here? And I was like, okay. And she said, if you see any job you want, go ahead and apply for it. I was like, okay. And so I worked here for 20 months. Great experience. Dayna and I both completed the work for our HR, senior HR certification. I got to see how HR, the inner workings are. I help people find employment. And then September, I got employed at, well, 2 jobs in 1 week. I deployed at Point Park and Red Cross. And so I was like, yeah, but it is great. And I was able to use something bad that happened to me going to prison to help other people, because we help, I don't know if it's went up or down, but when I was here, we helped about 31% at any time veterans who had barriers to employment, felonies, misdemeanors. And it was just amazing. It was amazing.
George, I have to follow you. That's such a good story.
That is a good story.
Well, here's what I would say about all of it. If I'm speaking directly to the veterans that are out there are fabulous resources out there. We like to think that we're one of them, but take advantage of all of them, okay? And maybe you have an affinity for one or two. Just pick the ones that you feel the most well connected to, that you feel can help you with your personal circumstances. We do a lot of individualized and tailored services, meeting with you one-on-one, but there are others that do equally as amazing things. So just do the research. If you're an employer, we connect employers directly with veteran applicants, but we also feel incumbent upon ourselves to make sure that you're properly positioned to attract, hire, and retain veterans. We need to keep the veteran population here in Western Pennsylvania. We have a population decline. Our jobs are stagnant here. And if someone is transitioning out of the military and they're researching where it was that they want to land after their service, and if they're from here and there's not a good job to come back to, guess what? They're not going here. Or if they come here, get their education, and then can't find a job, guess what? They are not going to stay here. So we absolutely need to come together and make sure that the veteran population that is so important to keeping our region economically thriving, but we have to keep them here. So we definitely would encourage you to connect with us, become an employer partner. and so that we can, help you do the best job possible for not just the veterans, but, for your employees in general. We would love to help you.
And Dayna, how can someone become an employer partner?
Just pick up the phone and call. Actually, they can pick up the phone and call us. You can reach out to us online do the research about Pittsburgh Hires Veterans, and reach out to Brian or myself directly. Brian is brian@pittsburghhiresveterans.com, and I am Dayna, that's spelled Dayna, at pittsburghhiresveterans.com. We are all equipped to help you. So when you come to the organization, you're just not assigned one person. Like, we all work as a team to make sure that our collective skill sets really help you, whether you're an employer or a veteran.
Awesome. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you, each of you, Brian, Dayna, George. Thank you for your service as well. Happy birthday, happy Veterans Day, all of the happies. PRSA Pittsburgh is really honored to be working with Pittsburgh Hires Veterans and supporting your mission. And so I really encourage everybody that's listening right now to know, not only familiarize yourself with Pittsburgh Hires Veterans and all the resources that we talked about today, but join the employer partner if you're interested. And finally, if you want to go on a nice, lovely bike ride tomorrow at 9 a.m. and do a little bike tour in honor of Pittsburgh Hires Veterans and Veterans Day, their first annual fundraiser is happening tomorrow, and we do have the link in the chat right now for you to learn more about that. If you can't come, please consider donating as well. We'll never say no to that. And with that, thank you all. And it was nice to chat with you, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kristen.
Yeah, but before we go, I do want to acknowledge some special veterans that didn't get some attention. So our founder, Jack Wagner, is a Marine Corps veteran, and he's also a Purple Heart recipient. He served in Vietnam, and without him, our organization wouldn't be here today. So I definitely want to give a huge shout out to him. And I'd also like to shout out to my husband and also his father, who is a Marine Corps veteran. We were talking about the Marine Corps celebrations, and my husband told me today on the way to work, he's like, dang, I didn't get to my dad first. He texted me this morning, happy birthday, Marine. That's what it's all about.
That is what it's all about. Thank you guys so much for everything.